Hey folks, Matthew Weiss here, weiss-sound.com, and now Weiss Advice here on YouTube. One of the questions I get asked most frequently is how do I mix background vocals? And as someone who does a lot of R&B music, I have to say background vocals, pretty important, something I work with a lot. Alright, I'm going to play a little bit of this record, and I'm going to break down some ideas.
Nobody tell me nothing, don't know the pain I see. Got a lot of fight in me, never give up on my dreams. I ain't gon' follow no one, I claim my royalty. There's no limit to a king.
Alright, so there are three main ways I conceptualize background vocals. Remember, we're musicians, sound is our instrument, so we don't apply the sound to the music, we figure out the music, and then that tells us how to apply the sound, right? So there's three ways that I think of background vocals. The first way is background vocals that are really just meant to reinforce the lead vocal. They're meant to thicken the sound, or make it feel more full, or alive, or lock down the melody. The second way is sort of the choir background vocals, where we have stacks of vocals, maybe some harmonies, maybe some counterpoints, something like that. And the third way is background vocals that are really kind of acting like lead vocals, like, for example, maybe a vamp in the last chorus or something like that, where the vocalist is almost doing a second lead part. And fortunately, in this record, we've got all three, so I'm going to take you through the basic ideas and some techniques for each approach. All right, first of all, let's get rid of the track so we can hear the vocals in solo. And the number one thing is to get the lead vocal sounding the way that you want it, right? So I've already treated my lead vocal. If we don't have our lead vocal in the right context, then we're not going to know how to form the background vocals around it.
Nobody tell me nothing, don't know the pain I've seen. Got a lot of fight in me, never give up on my dreams.
Alright, so now I'm going to focus on these first two blue tracks here. These are our reinforcing doubles. These are not really meant to be heard, they're meant to be felt, and they're meant to make the lead vocal feel fuller.
Nobody tell me nothing, don't know the pain I see. Got a lot of
So what I'm going to do is pull up the lead vocal, and my goal here is sort of to make these doubles as loud as possible while feeling like they're not there, if that makes sense. So I've got them turned up pretty high.
Nobody tell me nothing, don't know the pain I've seen.
And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start EQing out anything that's going to get in the way or step on that lead vocal. So if I turn these effects on, you're going to hear this completely vanish.
Nobody tell me nothing, don't know the pain I've seen. Got a lot.
It almost sounds like a lead vocal with some kind of a doubler effect on it. Now, what I'm doing here is pretty extreme. You can see I'm taking out lots of tone. I'm cutting a huge resonance here at 3K. I'm cutting out a pretty wide band, actually, for such a deep cut here. 8 dB at like 770. I'm not going to go through the specifics of all of this because this is going to vary depending on what the vocal recording sounded like, but literally anything that feels like it's interacting with the vocal in a distracting way, I'm getting rid of. The only thing that stays a little bit universal for me going from song to song is this 30 Q, where I'm band limiting the vocal sound on these doubles. And what I mean by that is I'm taking away all of the extremes. I'm taking everything from 220 and below down with a high pass filter, and I'm taking everything from about 12K and up away with a low pass filter. And the idea here is that I don't really need those extremes. The lead vocal is going to give me all of that. So this is a way of, again, making that vocal smaller. The other thing that I'm doing is some pretty heavy compression. I've got not only a compressor with the threshold pretty deep down here, I also have a limiter. And the idea is I don't want any transients or spikes in the vocal performance that was done on these backgrounds to suddenly jump ahead of the lead vocal. I want them to stay locked down below the lead vocal. So I'm going to turn those on, and here we go.
Nobody tell me nothing, don't know the pain I've seen. Got a lot of fight in me, never give up on my dreams. I ain't gon' follow no.
It's almost like those vocals aren't exactly there. But if we were to take them away, suddenly we would lose a lot from the lead.
Nobody tell me nothing, don't know the pain I've seen.
Right, you miss it when it's gone. The only last little note that I want to make here is that when I'm doing these kinds of doubles, I tend to go heavier on whatever kind of tuning I'm using, if it's that kind of record. Here you can see that my retune speed's down at 11 milliseconds, which is pretty darn fast. The actual lead vocal, I think, was like 35 milliseconds, something like that. So it's a more extreme locked in sound because I want whatever melody is there to be just locked in place and really reinforced. That's what I was trying to say. All right, so now let's take a look at our green tracks here. These are choral type vocals. When we hear them, we hear a harmony and a counterpoint.
Ain't gon' follow no one. I claim my royalty. There's no limit to a king. I'm gon' get this golden ring.
So one of the things I tend to do, I'm a fan of doing this sort of bridged out kind of panning structure where I don't necessarily go to the extremes like left and right, but I'll go to maybe like 50 to 75 left and right. People have different takes on that. There's definitely merits to just panning it left, right, for sure. But I find that to create a convincing choir image, if you were to see a choir, you wouldn't be seeing a choir where half of the choir is in one corner of the church and the other half is in the other corner. They would be closer to the center and spread across the stage. And so I'm sort of trying to recreate that image. You might not do the same thing, and there isn't a right or wrong there. One thing I'm definitely going to do, though, is I'm going to put on a doubler because there's just not enough stacks here to feel like a choir. So when I'm using a doubler in this context, there's a number of ways we can use doublers, but if I really want to create the sense of a second voice, I want to use delay times that are longer than 30 milliseconds. This is actually very fast for what I normally do because I've got it at about 30 milliseconds on the delay. But anything shorter than that, the sound is actually going to fold back in on itself and you're going to get a chorusing effect. And what I really want is something that sounds like a second set of vocals. So I'll be anywhere from about 30 milliseconds to 60 milliseconds, and I'm even going to stretch this out a little bit because when I did it, it was a little bit too narrow feeling. So I'm going to pull that onto one of these, and you'll hear the before and after. I'm also doing a little bit of pitch modulation because naturally, if you were to have a second voice there, that voice would be drifting around the pitch. It wouldn't be spot on. So here's a quick before and after.
Ain't gon' follow no one. I claim my royalty. That's
And it's not like the most dramatic thing in the world. It's really just meant to make it feel like there's more of a choir present. So let's make that adjustment on this one as well. And let's bring these all in and do a before and after. So it feels a lot more like a choir stack. So that's my first move, and then I'm coming in here and I have to conceptualize what kind of a choir I want, right? Do I want something that feels like a natural textural sound, like a gospel choir would sound very natural, so I would be keeping in a lot of the tones, or do I want something that's more like a pop choir where it's like super smooth, super crisp, and I ultimately decided to go in that direction. So again, I'm doing some pretty extreme EQ here. I'm taking out some pretty deep resonances, 15 dB cuts in the mid-range, and also doing like a pretty good amount of top end boost here. I'm taking the 6K plus range way up because there's this like cool airy texture that's on Renee's voice here. So I'm going to bring those on, quick before and after, and this is not going to be subtle. Right, so pretty clear cut. Basically, I'm just getting a very, very smooth, very top-endy version of this choir that's going to kind of like make the whole record sparkle when it comes in. Then I've got to add a sense of space to it, something that puts it into a choir world. So I'm grabbing space for space and throwing on a cathedral convolution. That sounds like this before and after. Pretty much got me set up. Now, that's really the recipe that I think you would typically follow overall. There's a couple other things that I'm doing here just to kind of modernize it a little bit. I'm doing a little bit of compression to just kind of pull that tone forward because I want that airy tone to kind of like coat the track like cough syrup or something, just like put a gloss on it. And then I'm also doing a little bit of stereo widening to stretch out the sound. Now, I could have panned the vocals a little bit more out, but this is also going to stretch out the reverb sound as well in addition. So let's do the before and after there. Take off all these effects and then put them on. There's nothing subtle about this. Bring our lead back in.
Ain't gon' follow no one. I claim my royalty. There's no limit to a king.
Of course, the last question is just what kind of balances do you want? Do you want the choir to be like really up front? Sometimes certain records call for that. Do you want the choir to be subtle in the background? Some records call for that. Here I'm kind of setting it about even with the lead vocal because I feel like it adds a really nice dynamic to the record.
Ain't gon' follow no one. I claim my royalty. There's no limit to a king. I'm gon' get this golden ring.
Very last bit, having a vamped vocal. I'm not going to go into how to do it so much in terms of the exact techniques. Really, it's more about just the main approach, and it's really simple. Once you've got your lead vocal sounding the way that you want, you take whatever effects you used to get your lead vocal to sound that way, and you simply copy them over onto the background track that is supposed to be acting like a lead. It's pretty simple, because it is a lead. The only differences might be that I might use maybe a little bit less top end because maybe I want to position the lead vocal right up front and then the vamp might sit just a little back. So a little less top end might be nice in that way. And, you know, maybe like tiny tweaks, maybe a little extra compression or something like that just to kind of lock it in place. And I'll show you one technique that can be really effective if you want a vamp that's going to stand out and command attention. What you would do is you would grab a bus send. So in this case, we're going to use 19. We're going to put a compressor on our lead. Let's just do our comp for simplicity's sake. And we're going to trigger the side chain with the same send. So basically my ad-lib vocal, my vamp here, my background vocal is now going into the detector of the compressor. So now the compressor is no longer acting on the lead. It's reducing gain on the lead, but it's acting on the vamp. And this way, when the vamp comes in, it's going to lower the lead a little bit. And so this is going to subconsciously kind of cause the listener's attention to shift over to the vamp, which is a nice little technique. If you really want the soloish vamp thing to stand out. I don't necessarily do that on every record. I just wanted to show it. I probably won't do it on this one actually, but it is a cool technique if you do want to do it that way. If the vamp is particularly good too, that can also be a good reason to do it. Anyway, guys, I want to wrap this up by saying if you dig what I'm doing here on this channel and you like this video, hit that like. If you want to catch more of these videos, I need you to hit the subscribe with the bell for notifications. And remember, we are musicians. Sound is our instrument. I will catch you next time.